Hello and welcome to episode 4 of What Makes This Song Special. Once again, a big thanks to everybody who has watched and liked and shared the first 3 episodes. I'm hoping to try and get a wee bit of a following going now, and hopefully you can keep sharing and get some friends interested if they like music, if they like to hear little stories about life and music, and hear cover versions of songs. This week's song is going to be by an artist called Christopher Cross, who was a singer in the 80s, and the song is called Sailing. So as always, I'll talk about what makes the song special to me, a story from my past, something that made this song a sort of significant part of the soundtrack to my life so far. Leave a comment if this song is special in somewhat or some way to you. I then will talk a little bit about the song, from what I've read about the song and how it was written, and I'll talk a wee bit about Christopher Cross's vocal style, and then in part 2, as always, I will cover the song, do my own version of it. I took this one up a little bit. I haven't actually recorded it yet, but when I've been working on it in preparation for today's part 2, I decided to take it up maybe 3 or 4 keys, I think, from the original. It was just a wee bit lower than I like to sing. And I think that's something that a lot of my students, we talk about key changing all the time. It's a big discussion for singers. Should you change the key of a song? Should you leave it alone? A lot of people think you should leave a song alone and try and sing it in the original key, and if you can't, you should leave that song and cover something else. I'm always of the opinion that you should work towards being able to sing the song in many keys, because that gives you the most amount of vocal diversity. But ultimately, there will be a sweet spot, for you to sing it as a singer. Genetically, there will be a place where the song sounds best for your voice, and I don't think there's any issue with changing the key of a song down or up. A lot of people hate to take a song down; they think it's cheating, but that's for another time, another episode. Or if you want to get in touch for vocal coaching on Zoom or Skype, wherever you are in the world, we can talk more about these things. And I will talk a wee bit about Christopher Cross's vocal style later on. So this week's story goes back to 5th year at high school. So I would have been about 16 years old. Episode 1, I talked about how I became a singer, or how I started to sing, and that was in 3rd year at high school, I think. So this would have been about 3 years, or 2 years later, sorry. 2 years later. By this point, you know, I've sung quite a lot in school, and I'm still having panic attacks and throwing up before every performance, but I'm a wee bit less nervous about it than I was in 3rd year. And life was good. I was playing in bands, writing songs, and singing every day, in school, out of school, rehearsing at night with different people, jamming with different musicians, anybody that had a guitar or a keyboard or whatever, we would get together and try and write songs, or practice other people's songs and just talk about music. So that was a time of my life where I'd got kind of obsessed with music. And at this point, and I'd just started a band with some school friends, so a guy called Anthony Dempsey, and another friend who was a year above us called Scott Hanby. Scott was an amazing piano player. He was like a classically trained piano player, grade 8, and I'd just started playing the piano or keyboard by this point, and wasn't very good enough to write some songs, but not great. So Scott took the piano in this band, and we called the band The Initiative. And Tony, or Anthony, we called him Tony. He loved to tinker with sort of 70s and 80s synthesizers. He had a real love for 70s and 80s synthesizers. And we went up to his bedroom in his house, he had this sort of semicircular configuration of keyboards around him, where he would jump around like the Yes keyboard player Rick Wakeman, sort of octopus, all these hands going on to different synths and keyboards, kind of pointlessly, but just playing that game of trying to be like your heroes. So it was good fun. I played guitar and sang, and we asked our high school drama teacher and director of the kind of school shows and stuff, Mr. Muirhead, to manage us. I don't know if he actually agreed to managing us or if we just sort of forced him into it, but I'm pretty sure we referred to him as our manager. It sounded professional to have a manager, so especially if it was an adult, so and not just one of our pals. So this is great, we've got a manager. We sounded professional, and I think we talked more about being in a band at that point than we actually did things that being in a band involve, like playing instruments and rehearsing, and we just kind of got together and talked about how great it would be to be a famous band, and talked about all our inspirations and heroes and all that kind of stuff. And at that point in life, everything's just exciting. It's so exciting, and you've got these dreams where you can be anything you want to be. That kind of gets taken away from you as you become an adult. For most people, anyway. I don't know. I think a lot of people they lose the dreamer part. I don't know if I've ever lost the dreamer part, but as we get older, we realise that things are a wee bit more realistic, and some dreams can't come true. But at this point, we were just full of dreams, and every one of them could definitely come true. We almost thought we were, destined for fame and fortune by rehearsal one. And I think we only did 2 gigs with the initiative. We entered the school talent contest last minute, played in the first round and got through to the final, which was great. And then we played in the final. We won the final, which was a fantastic feeling. We won the school talent contest, which was as big as things get when you're at school. In retrospect, it's like a school talent contest, but back then it was huge. It was like playing Wembley. So, and I became famous in school after that, not so much for the singing, because everybody had heard me sing in school already, but because I decided that even though we were a kind of rock band, I thought, I don't know, there were like big kind of boy band. There's a big boy band thing going on in the 90s, and for some reason I thought it would be cool to sort of do a Peter Andre. If you don't know who Peter Andre is, you can Google him. But I decided to wear like a shirt open, and wear like my boxer shorts with the Tommy Hilfiger logo pulled up under my jeans so you could see the designer boxer shorts. And I put some baby oil on my very skinny 16-year-old abs, so you could see sort of a reflection of yourself in my stomach if you looked. And I got kind of slagged off for it afterwards, but hey ho. It was funny, and it's a good story. So I remember. We'll get back to the song and digress. But the song "Sailing" by Christopher Cross. So he was again an artist that I hadn't really heard much about. I didn't know much about Christopher Cross. Again, very different sort of inspirations and influences rather at that point, band wise. And Christopher Cross wasn't really in a genre that I would have listened to. It's quite kind of soft pop, dreamy pop. And so we were rehearsing in Tony's house the day before the audition. I don't know if we were supposed to be in school or whatever, or if it was after school or whatever. But we went up to Tony's house, and he did this thing where he would have all the keyboards set up, like I said. And he played this song that he'd written called The Discovery of God. And he played it to us a few times, and none of us had the heart to sort of ask him or to tell him that every time he played it, it was completely different. I think it was like 20 minutes long, this big opus where he would play the keyboards. And it was called The Discovery of God. It was this long kind of Pink Floyd-esque creation that he had sort of thrown back his curly long hair, and it's very theatrical. And it was a great talking point and a great piece. It was a really cool piece. It was kind of similar each time, but I think each time he did it, he sort of made it up as he was going along. And so that was always funny. And then we took a break, went for a cup of tea, and Anthony's house, his parents were always really into hi-fi. Hi-fi, again, something that's dying sadly in the modern culture just now. But hi-fi was this, high fidelity music systems where you would get speakers and we'd call them separates. So you would have your amplifier, your CD player, cassette player, all these different things, and sometimes a graphic equalizer, and you could sit and, if you were a real perfectionist, And Tony had some really, really nice, or Tony's parents had some really, really nice hi-fi equipment. And he said, I need you to hear this song. And he sticks on Sailing by Christopher Cross, and he went through to the kitchen to make a cup of tea for us and left me sitting listening to Sailing. And the minute those strings come in, just away, dreaming. I'm sailing away in my mind. I suppose that's the whole point. It conjures up images of sailing, the sea, dreaming, freedom, all these different things that come into your head when you hear that song. And then Christopher Cross's voice comes in, and we'll talk a wee bit about his voice later, but it's got this amazing dreamy voice that, yeah, it just carries you somewhere. And Tony came through and said, have you never heard this before? Oh, Christopher Cross, this is fantastic. My dad got me into this stuff. And I remember he said to me, I think he's the greatest singer of all time. He said to me, you're number 2. And I was so big-headed at this point, I was annoyed that I was number 2. I think he meant it as a major compliment. I remember thinking, hold on, number 2? Why am I number 2? But Christopher Cross, yeah, I was kind of blown away. Not so much by his vocals. I was always more impressed by big, heavy rock vocals. I think, again, retrospectively, his voice is stunning. His voice is so, tonally beautiful, and it's just got so many qualities. But back then I was more into kind of, I want to hear somebody singing high. I want to hear somebody singing really high and really powerfully. And yeah, I've learned that that's not the only way to sing over the years. But yeah, he made me up a mixtape. Again, a mixtape, something that people used to do, pals would do, or boyfriends would do for their girlfriends, and vice versa. You'd make up a tape of your favourite songs. And then I suppose a bit like a playlist now, you would make a playlist for somebody on Spotify or Apple Music. Back then we used to make up a cassette tape of our favourite songs and record them for friends, so we could let our friends hear the bands and artists that we were into and the songs that we were into. So he made me a mixtape up with, I remember it had Sailing on it, it had The Sun Always Shines on TV, and Take On Me by Aha, and it had Dignity by Deacon Blue, and I hadn't heard any of those songs before, and I got really into those artists and those songs off the back of that. So the mixtape culture did work for getting you into other bands and artists that you maybe wouldn't have listened to. But the song, yeah, when I close my eyes and I hear the song these days, anytime I hear those strings and that amazing production and that great guitar riff that comes in, it's got this really cool guitar riff that comes in. It's on a different tuning. It's not like a normal E tuning. It's like a strange tuning, and he's got this awesome guitar riff. Again, it's very, very shoegaze, dreamscapey sound that comes in, and it just takes you away. So the guitar comes in over the strings, and amazing. And every time I hear it, I think of the people we hung about with, first parties, first social scene as a teenager, playing in bands, writing songs with friends. That's what it takes me every time. I think of friends that have drifted away from life or for no real reason other than circumstance. I don't speak to either of those guys anymore. Tony, he moved to Australia, I think, at one point, and kind of drifted away. And Scott's down south in England somewhere. And yeah, it's kind of sad because we don't really see each other anymore. And you think of these people you shared these really special moments of your childhood with and of your journey. And yeah, they're no longer sort of part of your life, but always reminds me of all those things. And yeah, fantastic song. So we will talk a little bit about the song itself. So it was released in spring 1980. It was Christopher Cross's second single from his first album. His first album just being called Christopher Cross. It's a famous green cover with a pink flamingo on the front. Really iconic album. And actually, I listened to the album in its entirety for the first time in years, just a few months ago with my headphones. And I was blown away. It's just an amazing album. I think Sailing's still the best song on it, but it's got some incredible songs on it. So if you haven't heard it before, I highly recommend it. It won. He thought it would be too introspective to be a hit, but it actually became number one. Won awards for the song and record of the year. And apparently he wrote it, he came up with a dreamy guitar riff for it one night in his apartment. I think he was trying to write or play around with an idea a bit like sort of Joni Mitchell did, with like different tunings and things like that. And he came up with that lovely guitar tuning. And it took him a couple of years, apparently, until he was happy with, changing lyrics and changing elements of it to become the finished composition that we love now. And he wrote it lyrically. Apparently, it was about how a friend of his who had a boat when they were teenagers used to take him sailing, and how the sailing and going out on the boat with his pal used to help him clear his head of all the existential teenage angst and things that were going on in his life, as we all, I think, probably experience as teenagers. We kind of get to that point. I certainly did. You kind of, what am I going to do with my life? Why are we here? Is there a God? All those questions that you ask as a teenager, you kind of start to get scared about these things, and things get a wee bit more real as you head towards adulthood. And I think the sailing on the boat was a big part of Christopher Cross getting away from all those questions of life, and he would just sail out on the boat and look at the sea and have a laugh with his pal. So that's what the lyrics are about, and I think it reminds me of friendship and, as I said, all those things too, albeit without the water. So I think he nailed it. I think he absolutely nailed it with the production. Essentially, it's about liberation, and it's got that dreamy journey that you go on when you hear it. So I think he absolutely nailed the composition and the arrangement and the production. Christopher Cross as a singer, his vocal style is very, very soulful. Very soulful voice. We talked last week about Mick Hucknall from Simply Red. If you haven't seen that, check out, that was episode 3. But Mick Hucknall's soulful voice was more of a kind of powerful, soulful voice. Christopher Cross's voice isn't powerful, but it's, or certainly not powerful in volume, but certainly powerful emotively, but very soulful. Fits perfectly into this sort of soft pop genre, and he's got a very soft timbre. Uses a lot of what we call nasopharyngeal shaping, and I won't bore anybody with what that means. If you want to get in touch for vocal coaching at any point, we can talk more deeply about those types of things. But yeah, a nasopharyngeal twang mode, which gives him a wee bit of a nasal tone, but he balances that well by moving out of chest voice very early and moves into more of a cricothyroid sound. It's again big word, but it's when a singer moves from the muscles of the vocal cords into more of the ligament vibration. It's a softer, more fragile sound and gives him a sort of a very unique voice. A lot of people used to talk about Christopher Cross's falsetto and how he sang in falsetto voice. But I wouldn't say it's, personally, I don't think it's really an isolated falsetto at all. I think it's very mixy, albeit with a lot of ligament vibration, which is what gives the kind of the illusion of it being more head voicey than it really is. There's still some chest register in there, still some muscle in there. So yeah, great song, just an amazing song. As always, please leave a comment. What makes the song special to you? Christopher Cross Sailing, for me, as I said, reminds me of my teenage years, friendships that maybe have dwindled, or maybe they'll be rekindled again at some point in the future. But people who have kind of drifted away from your life, and just all the excitement of being a teenager and thinking about where your life's headed. All those things are in that song for me when I close my eyes and listen. So let me know what it means to you. Once again, thanks so much for watching the episode, and click part 2 for my cover version of the song. Thanks so much.